Hello, team. Welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video. Myself, Jonathan MS Pierce. This is a Ukraine war kind of appendix that I often do when there have been some backlogs of Andrew Perpetua's loss list that I haven't gone through. Just a bit of closure for me and a bit of statistical analysis. Uh, it's not for everyone. So, take this what it is. Some of you will like this, some of you will not watch this video. Whatever. If it's not for you, don't watch the video. So we are going to look at 3 days that we missed out. The 30th of January. We're going to go back to the 28th and the 27th as well. So three missing days, just to get a sense of what has been destroyed over those days, see if we can see any patterns. First of all, 192 personnel loss for the 30th is an incredibly high number. Andrew said that he's been seeing some really extraordinary numbers of personnel lost. Compare that to say 109, 148 on those two other previous days. Then we look at the equipment. It's pretty much parity there. Maybe a couple more Russian losses than Ukrainian. Combat assets are actually marginally more for the Ukrainians than the Russians. So let's whiz through the Ukrainian losses. We see a command and control vehicle and a radar ANTPQ 50. Those are sort of ones that you see on top of the Humvees. Not massive, but still useful bits of kit. Quite a few bits of artillery the Ukrainians have lost here, including a couple of M777 howitzers damaged, M119, M101, Lancet drones, FPV drones, Vandals being very prominent for the Russians here. You can see they feature quite a lot down this list. A single tank, don't know what it is. Four infantry fighting vehicles, half of those destroyed. Got a damaged CB9040, one of these Swedish provided vehicles, very capable. Um, but yeah, a couple of those damaged in the last couple of days. AFV, a nondescript one being damaged, and then we have a captured M113, another one. Three VABs, so these French provided ones are now obsolete. They're phasing them out and getting them to Ukraine. It could be part of the 155th Brigade that's now active around Pokrovsk mainly. That's the Anna of Kiev Brigade. We've got a BVS 10, another articulated, one of those small tracked articulated ones that the Swedish have provided. There's a couple of those in the last couple of days that have also been taken out. We've got some Kozak senators, Oshkosh, um, MRAPs being all of those destroyed and abandoned. So 100% lost there. And then a few infantry mobility vehicles of unknown types, apart from the one Euro Vantak. There we go. That's the Ukrainians. They're losing quite a bit of stuff there. Ukrainians, including command vehicle. The Russians losing an awful lot of civilian vehicles, like we see regularly. Some ATVs as well, quads and golf buggies. In terms of the tanks loss, we've got a T90M here. So I reported this morning that there were no visually confirmed T90s for the month of January. That's according to Oryx. Here we have Andrew Perpetua disagreeing, saying that actually there's a drone dropped bomb taking out an abandoned T90M. So that there's a bit of disagreement with those stats. Tracked garden shed as well. Five tanks, almost all of them destroyed and abandoned. 100% of the APCs and IFVs destroyed or abandoned, irretrievably lost. BMP ones, twos, and threes, and MTLBs, and a few Tiger M's. I was watching The Agency. So the Agency is on Paramount. It's a remake of the French series called Le Bureau des Légendes, which is an excellent series. I advise you watch the French series. The one with Michael Fassbender on Paramount is very good. We finished watching the last episode last night. It's excellent, and it has a Ukrainian storyline as well. And I asked this question at an interview that Jonathan Fink was hosting in Lviv with an academic, saying, "Look, how do we bridge this gap of well, how do we rise to the challenge of getting Ukraine out there in the public information spaces and present a narrative that's pro-Ukraine? And actually, that's one of those ways you can do it, which is infuse pro-Ukrainian narratives into popular culture. You got sort of social media, that's important. You got popular culture, and you got high culture, academic stuff. But in popular culture, you can have pro-Ukrainian storylines that give people an understanding of the importance of Ukraine. And the agency does a really good job of showing how interconnected everything is. You've got the Belarus, Russia, Ukraine kind of angle in that. And then you've got um, the Sahel region, you've got Sudan in Africa, and you've got Iran as well, all featuring that in parallel. So really good stuff. But anyway, uh, that was why does I bring that up? They talk about, so when I watch these programs, like I know what that vehicle is, I know what that they talk about. Oh, we've got a column of 6 vehicles. We've got BTR 60, and we got and they said Tigra. Tigra M's or something like that, and I was oh, I would pronounce that differently, and I obviously I default to them for knowing better. I'd call that a Tiger M, but Tigra M is what they said. But Ural trucks and so on and so forth, and lots of civilian vehicles on there too. Let's go to the 28th. So going back in time now, a few days, 109 personnel lost. The losses are about 1.5 to 1 in total losses. Combat asset of Russian to Ukrainian. Combat asset losses are about the same. To be honest, Ukrainians losing another NTPQ 48 this time, radar, so similar, fairly smallish radar, a boat. We have a couple of bits of artillery, a couple of tanks, another CV 9040, this time abandoned, hit by Vandal drone, and then some sort of range of actually Soviet era stuff apart from the YPR 765, all abandoned and no doubt irretrievably lost. We've got an AFV, a Conkers. Conkers AFV, let's see what that is. Um, I'm not aware. Conkers AFV, 1974, so a fairly old one. A BMP2, part of the BRDM2 variant. Okay. There we go. So it's pretty old, Soviet era. Part of the BRDM2 numerous variants tree. The Conkers is a relatively modern tank hunter vehicle, which saw a limited production from 74 to 82. It's characterized by a fixed launcher with 5 wire-guided 9M113 Conkers 85 Spandrel missiles, later upgraded to the 9M111 Faggot. So we see some of these being used actually in as ATGMs, just general set aside, but these are loaded on a pretty old chassis there. So that's what the Conkers is, and that's destroyed. And that's actually that's back from February 2022. So right at the beginning of the war. That's probably why you're seeing that on the list there. And interestingly, in the APC category, we've got Striker M113 and a couple of Spartans. Those are UK provided FV103 APCs there. So Senator as well, a whole range of Western provided vehicles, a couple of Humvees too. So fair bit of kit there taken out by the Russians, and most of that irretrievably lost. So that's going to be a challenge for the Ukrainians there. Then when we come to the Russian losses for that particular day, we have um, more, but mainly in terms of the ATVs, trucks, and civilian vehicles. A lot of ATVs, Desert Cross 1000-3, so a lot of golf buggies taken out, and motorcycles, pickups, gliders. I wonder if Russia is receiving continued consignments of these Desert Cross 1000-3 from China. That'd be a real shame if that's the case. We've got an engineering vehicle, a few bits of artillery, 4 tanks here. Most of the equipment is irretrievably lost after the artillery. Infantry fighting vehicle, BMP2s mainly, and then MTLBs, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, nothing too crazy, just a lot of civilian vehicles and ATVs. And it could be that we are just more consistently seeing parity in terms of the traditional um, combat asset losses. So you look at these colors up there, there's quite often days where the Ukrainians are losing as many as the Russians are. And you would normally cut, a couple of years ago, that would have been bad news because it was at that time you every day, most days was like 3-1 Russian to Ukrainian losses. We are not at that stage anymore, and you might be forgiven for thinking, "Oh dear, the Russians are doing pretty well, and the Ukrainians are losing much more comparatively." What's happened is, I think the Russians have lost so much equipment that it's all of this equipment down here. Look at that brown. The Ukrainians don't have any browns. And civilian vehicles, the Russians are losing 2, sometimes 3, sometimes more times as many civilian vehicles as the Ukrainians. And we're hearing consistently that they're using them to ferry people to the contact line and even in unarmored convoys to attack the Ukrainians. So the combat assets are actually from there to here, probably at a guess. And they probably are still losing 2, sometimes 3 times the amount of equipment combat assets, they just look very different these days. So here on the what date do we have now? 27th, 148 personnel lost, and we have a 3-to-1 loss ratio overall. Uh, Top heavy for the Russians in terms of artillery loss. So there's probably a montage video that's come out from someone like Magyar to show a lot of artillery being taken out, and that leads to a sort of 2.5 to 1 loss ratio in terms of those vehicles. And then the Russians still losing more civilian vehicles and ATVs as well. So we go to the Ukrainian losses. Quickly run through these. Got a front end loader with a backhoe, so it's an engineering vehicle. We're seeing Germany's been delivering some of these. Constantine's doing constant fundraising. There's a lot of focus on excavators and engineering vehicles for the Ukrainians to be able to use. Another two S-22 Bogdana. That's a self-propelled howitzer that the Ukrainians produce now at a fairly good rate. We have a couple of tanks, a couple of infantry fighting vehicles. We've got Snatch Land Rover destroyed. I hope that wasn't one of the ones we provided. Two M113s, Max Pro, Kozak, Bushmaster, etc., etc. Just a range of equipment the Ukrainians have lost. Most of it irretrievably lost, which is bad news for the Ukrainians there, but nothing too serious to worry about. Then when we go back to the Russian losses, and this is the final kind of synopsis for this video. We see a lot of civilian vehicles, motorcycles, SUVs, laders, pickup trucks, loafs, Bukanka vans, these Scooby-Doo vans. We got ATVs, a number of quads and golf buggies. And then in the traditional combat asset losses, we have an awful lot of artillery, as mentioned. And almost all of these taken out by Nemesis drones. So when we presume a Nemesis drone montage there, which, as far as I can work out, is a robust, bigger quadcopter drone. But it's I think seen as a heavy bomber drone, but it's four big rotors rather than a little quadcopter that can go down to sub 10 inches in size. So we have three M46s here. It's a D20, a few D20s and D30s, a lot of old Russian howitzers being sort of towed out to work against the Ukrainians. They're showing that they're in a bit of a desperate state if they're using such a um, or if there is such a prevalence of these much older howitzers. Going down to the tanks, we've got four tanks there, including a couple of T80 BVMs or BVs, a few T72s. Almost all of their stuff after the artillery is irretrievably lost. Question is whether the damaged in the artillery section actually means that they won't be able to repair them with any kind of ease if they're taking out the barrel or the um, some of the mechanism. It might be that the Russians are unable to fix what is conceptually quite an easy thing to fix. Depends on what the spare parts are looking like, and if it's barrels, whether they can get spare barrels or they just give up on that howitzer and roll out another much older howitzer. Is there any point cutting off a barrel from an existing D30 to get it to the front line to put it onto the damaged D30? No, just get another D30 out of long-term storage. Just the question is, how many do they have left? Infantry fighting vehicles, most of these are irretrievably lost. BMP 2s and 3s, very few BMP 1s we're seeing at the moment these days, which is interesting, something we talked about recently as well, and then a few other bits and pieces. So uh, what are the main observations from these 3 days? I think that the Russians are probably using normal vehicles as combat assets. That other than that, the traditional categories are looking fairly close together compared to what we have seen previously. Um, Certainly, considerably more artillery pieces lost coming in from probably that one bit of footage, which would have taken place over a longer time period. It's not that that would have happened on that day. But anyway, that's one for the stats geeks out there. Let me know what you think. Please like, subscribe, and share. That's always really important. And take care. I'll speak to you soon.